Black Myth Wukong is a single-player action-adventure game with light RPG and fun-as-hell combat mechanics, developed and published by Chinese development studio Game Science. It was released on the 20th of August on PS5 and PC, with an Xbox release date yet to be announced, and seems to be the fastest-selling game on Steam since, like, ever. I wanted to bring you some kind of quick look video because I was very interested in playing this game since I saw the first trailer and didn't want to wait after beating it, so let's dive right in, shall we? Quick PSA to start things off. I'm currently at the beginning of the third chapter of the game, so I'm not in the big picture about all story bits yet, but I'll get there sooner or later. Also, I'm exclusively showing footage from the first chapter, because I don't want to spoil the game too much. Black Myth Wukong takes place in a fantasy world based on, or at least heavily inspired by, the Chinese novel Journey to the West, which follows the adventures and eventual ascension to godhood of the monkey-like character Sun Wukong. This world is full of all kinds of different anthropomorphic animals, badass human warriors, larger-than-life godlike creatures, and other monsters ripped straight out of Eastern mythology, so prepare thyself to see all manners of strange stuff the Western mind cannot fully comprehend. Seriously, there are some really weird but very cool characters and enemies in this game. As far as the story synopsis goes, I think you'll have a better understanding of it all if you've actually read Journey to the West beforehand, because the game's story picks up right after the events of the novel, as far as I understand. It's not really required though, so please don't take that as some form of gatekeeping on my part. Because I for one didn't read the novel at all, I only knew about the character of Sun Wukong from other pieces of media, and I don't feel like I'm greatly missing out on anything so far. So basically, Wukong just wants to live a peaceful life on his mountain after achieving godhood, but that doesn't sit well with the Celestial Court really. So they come after him, and after exchanging some pleasantries, a short and admittedly very epic battle ensues. This battle serves also as some kind of basic combat tutorial, by the way. The fight ends rather abruptly though, because our sweet monkey boy gets promptly buried under a huge rock, where Sun Wukong effectively remains to this day. Now, you don't get to play as the monkey hero himself sadly, because of obvious reasons. Instead, you take control over one of his devotees, known only as the Destined One from here on out. As one of his followers, you shortly set out to collect 6 sacred relics belonging to the former hero, to either resurrect or actually become him. I'm not quite sure about the details here. But yeah, this is where your adventure begins, so let's talk about the gameplay for a bit, and this is gonna be spicy. So first and foremost, Black Myth Wukong is an honest-to-God, fast-paced action-adventure game that sees you exploring gorgeous locales, unlocking all kinds of awesome spells and abilities, and of course, fighting some pretty serious-looking enemies and bosses, which can turn out to be quite challenging, and that's actually where the meat and potatoes are in this game. And let me tell you, almost all of the boss fights I've had so far really were a spectacle for the eyes and ears. This is good news for all of you boss enjoyers out there, because there are a lot of them. Lots of secret bosses to find and fight too. The way the combat flows and using all your spells and abilities at your disposal feels extremely good, and oftentimes looks more like a dance than an actual fight. Beating things up with your staff is just plain fun, not gonna lie. Of course, almost all of your actions, like light and heavy attacks, using abilities and dodging, will drain your stamina, so managing and preserving it during fights is very important. But should you take damage after all, you can always use your healing gourd to top it off again, until it's fully used up, of course. Now, defeating enemies will reward you with will, which is basically the game's XP. Accumulating enough will result in you getting a, you guessed it, level up, or sparks as the game calls it, which in turn nets you a skill point for you to spend in various talent and ability trees, so you're getting more or less automatically stronger over time. There are a lot of different character upgrades to invest in, so the potential to choose something semi-good is quite big, but worry not, you can respec at any unlocked checkpoint for free as often as you like. Also, there are meditation spots scattered all around the game in different locations, which will reward you with a free skill point upon interaction, as well as free health, mana and stamina upgrades you can find in the world by thoroughly exploring the different areas. Speaking of its areas and map design, Black Myth: Wukong is not really an open world title, but it has some pretty big spacious levels for you to explore, so it's not just corridor after corridor, don't fret. As I've mentioned before, I'm currently in chapter 3, and many of the different areas up until now felt so damn huge that I pretty much constantly got lost while exploring them. It doesn't help that there's no map feature in this game, so a good sense of orientation could be beneficial here, which I don't possess at all, so I'm more or less running around like a headless chicken. But I'm not complaining. What I am complaining about though is the amount of invisible walls in this game. Seriously, there are a lot of them, and every single time I'm encountering one, it's taking me out of the immersion a bit. Oh well. While exploring and figuring out where to go next, you'll unlock small way shrines during your journey. Here you can rest up, which will also respawn all previously defeated enemies, of course. Replenish your healing gourd, health and mana. You can fast travel to other shrines you've visited before. And you can even buy stuff and craft weapons and armor here. You'll also resurrect at the last visited shrine after you die. There's more to be done at those waypoints when you progress far enough, but I'll leave it at that for now. Now, some of these aspects make it seem like there's a Souls-like slumbering somewhere beneath the hood of Black Myth: Wukong, but personally I don't think it qualifies as one really, at least it doesn't fully commit to it. The game has elements of a Souls game for sure, like the stamina management, the checkpoints and respawning enemies, healing flask and difficult encounters for example, but it's missing the most elemental aspect of one, and that is the souls. Or any other currency that is used for developing your character, buying items and upgrading weapons, yada yada yada. In Souls-likes, you'll lose this currency upon dying, and oftentimes you have to run back to your corpse to retrieve it. And if you die a second time while having a stack of it laying somewhere, it's basically lost forever. You simply don't get punished in the same way in Wukong because you don't lose anything if you die. The Destined One gets stronger by killing enemies, spending skill points and scouring the map for upgrades and materials. And combat in general feels more like a traditional hack and slash game, something like a Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, or even a Jedi Fallen Order. That game had Souls elements as well, but I wouldn't call it a fully realized Souls-like either. Come to think of it, Wukong also has those hidden loading screens at times where you have to squeeze yourself through some tight spaces, just like in Fallen Order, so the comparison isn't too far off, I think. But yeah, if you're coming from, say, Elden Ring for instance, expecting a similar title with a huge open world to explore and a demanding combat system with a truckload of all kinds of different weapons to try out, you probably will be disappointed. It's just a different kind of game. But in my opinion, it doesn't really matter anyway, because a fun game is just a fun game, and that is Wukong 100%. So that's basically all I have to say about the general gameplay side of things. There's a lot more to talk about, of course, like focus points, transformations, spirits and all the other stuff I haven't mentioned. But I'll get to the technical section now, because I feel like the video is turning into a full-fledged review already. So let's talk visuals, audio design and performance for a bit before I finally peace off again. Firstly, I think the game looks very pretty and it runs fairly well too. Even on my PC, and I don't have the most powerful machine under the sun. I say fairly well because performance-wise, on account of being an Unreal Engine game I suppose, it stutters and freezes here and there. I'm aware that Wukong is a very demanding game and that my computer may not be the best benchmark for this review, but I have seen it stuttering occasionally on more powerful setups too, and apparently it has some issues on PS5 as well. It's not too distracting, again, it runs very well most of the time, but I hope that game science will iron things out further as far as performance goes. But yeah, visually this game is a looker for sure, especially some of the later areas are nothing less than breathtaking. Audio design is great as well. All of the sound effects sound pretty chunky and impactful, especially if you smack some dudes with your staff or style on them with a jump attack, and that is very satisfying. Good sound design can make all the difference in a game, I feel. The OST is very good too, although there's not much in terms of background music while exploring. You will hear most of the banger tracks in boss fights or in cutscenes. There's also voice acting in this game. So far you can choose between Chinese and English, of course. And while I can speak only for the English dub, I have to say it all sounds very competent so far. And I think the actors and actresses fit their respective roles pretty well. Also, I like hearing all the little taunts from the various enemies, because they certainly do that, and I'm a big fan. So ultimately I would recommend Black Myth: Wukong for sure. Especially if you're a sucker for Eastern mythology or looking for a more streamlined and difficult action game that has a lot of spectacular boss fights and is simultaneously not afraid to show its influences. Combat leaves you with a lot of different options to explore. At one point you will become something like a monkey-shaped Swiss army knife, actually feeling like a legendary hero from long-forgotten fables. Although fighting things can feel quite button-mashy at times, it's still a lot of fun because using all of your different abilities and constantly unlocking new stuff doesn't get old, in my opinion. At least not yet. As mentioned, Wukong has some performance issues, even on stronger hardware and PS5, and all of the invisible walls suck big time, but nevertheless, it's well worth the asking price, I think. If you're a little tight on budget at the moment and are unsure about how the game would run for you, maybe wait for some patches first or grab it while it's on sale. That's the safest bet, I think. As far as game length goes, it doesn't seem to be on the short side as well, especially if you want to see everything and discover all its secret areas and bosses. How Long to Beat has this game listed as a 50 to 60 hours experience, so it seems there's a fair amount of content to be had here. Again, I'm currently in the 3rd chapter of the game and there are 6 in total, so I don't know how long the game really is, so take the estimates from How Long to Beat with a grain of salt. I should note the 50 to 60 hours is more like if you want to see everything the game has to offer. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Black Myth: Wukong for now. I think Game Science have created a very good game here, and despite some of its shortcomings, it's a really enjoyable experience so far. With that said, I'll leave you to your thoughts again. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it, and I'll see you in the next one.